we're already seeing Gen Zers greatly reduce their eating out times, and they're starting to cook at home, which I think is great news for the health of the overall food system. It will be much healthier if we start to actually viscerally touch and participate in the food system.
Food prices have been climbing out of control.
Prices at the grocery store are going up.
We got 50% tariffs on coffee from Brazil.
$7 for 3 ears of corn.
My budget has become double.
I need dinner for tonight.
No matter if it's organic or if it's regular, it's still going to be an arm and a leg for it.
In many sectors across the U.S., we'll be talking about which types of foods have been impacted the most by tariffs, the future of food prices, will they continue to rise parabolically, or will things cool off a little bit? And we're talking about the future of farming and food health overall in America with one of America's more popular farmers, Joel Salatin. He's the author of 17 books now, he told me. His latest is Pitchfork Pulpit: Wisdom and Practice in a Self-Reliant Life. He's also the co-owner of Polyface Farms. He's been on the show before. Check out our last interview down below, but not before the tariffs. So we'll talk about what happened this year. Welcome to the show, Joel. Good to see you again. Happy to see you.
Thank you, David. It's a real privilege.
Like I mentioned in the beginning, food prices have been climbing, and I want to just get your take on what's been going on and how people, the regular person, is affected. Now, I'm going to go to the BLS website and the and look at the CPI breakdown here. Now, the government's been shut down for quite some time, as you know, the longest shutdown in American history. So we don't have the latest data here, but I just want to pull up this breakdown from the September release and show you which line items have been impacted the most for food. So food at home, September 2024 to September 2025, the year-on-year unadjusted, seasonally unadjusted percentage change, most of that was in the low single digits. But then you move on to stuff like beef and poultry. You've got beef and veal, 14.5%, uncooked beef and other things, 16.6% up. So yeah, 18% uncooked beef roasts. And then you move down to coffee. Coffee is 18.9% up, roasted coffee. Instant coffee is up 22%. And keep in mind, this is a national average. The CPI is a national average. So in some areas, it's probably even more, some areas less. Produce, interestingly, hasn't really moved much. Processed fruits and cans, potatoes, lettuce, tomatoes, low single digit, normal inflation. Fresh fruits actually down 0.2%, apples. So we're really looking at a few things here. Beef is up a lot, coffee is up a lot, which really hurts a lot of people like me because I need coffee. It's not a matter of do I want coffee, I need coffee, Joe. But walk us through why those particular items have been hit the most, and then we can talk about the bigger inflation landscape for food.
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about coffee because I don't drink coffee and I don't buy coffee, so it's not a big deal for me. I do think the tariffs have affected coffee probably more than anything, and pretty much all American coffee is imported.
Sure,
that's a very import dependent line item. But I can speak to the beef for sure. The beef, yes. The beef especially, and the poultry secondarily, have been impacted dramatically, especially the beef, by the low herd amounts in the U.S. Anybody that looks at the inventory of beef in the U.S., it is the lowest since 1950, and that is not because people aren't eating beef. It's because of the drought in 2021 and 2022. So of all the the food items, beef has the longest cycle because it is a chicken from chick hatch to processing 6 to 8 weeks. Pig birth to slaughter 9 months, whereas beef birth to slaughter is more like 20 or even 24 months. Grass finished even up to 30 months. So what you have is a long tail of if there's an anomaly in that enterprise, you have a longer tail on beef than anything else. And so in 2021, 2022, we had a century's significant drought in the southern tier of the U.S. That would be, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Texas, all that southern tier. And many of those herds actually liquidated. There just wasn't feed. And so they're liquidated. And so it takes a long time for those to build back. And so the beef is primarily a weather issue. Now, one of the things that's delaying the build back is that many of the farmers are now older in this cycle compared to, say, the previous 15-year cycle. The farmers have gotten older, and and so many of them are not building back their herds. They don't care what the price is. I'm 70 years old. I don't want to expand, and so that is definitely delaying the build back of the herd. But the beef is primarily a weather situation, and then the pricing of poultry and beef as the commodities have increased, um, you know, that has also affected the input price. And I mean there's still a tail from COVID. I mean these plants had a big hit during COVID. Many of them had to close, and and so there's that issue. But for the beef, for sure, it's primarily a weather situation.
Do you think that the import volume has affected the herd inventory? Do we have any evidence to show that maybe there was fewer volume of beef imported due to higher costs from tariffs, and so distributors just sourced locally, and that contributed to lower inventory?
The only place I know where that happened was from Mexico, which Mexico does import a lot of beef to the U.S. And that beef was stopped not by tariffs, but by the screwworm. It's a new
Okay.
parasite, and so they halted all the imports of beef from Mexico due to the screwworm. That again kept the Mexican beef inventory from being able to augment the shortage in the U.S.
Just we'll talk about your farm in more detail, but since you run a farm that has cows, you raise cattle among other things. What have you experienced higher costs from running your farm, or different challenges this year, let's say, than prior years because of trade policies?
Actually, no, we haven't, and in fact, we have not raised our prices like the kind of percentages you're talking about. We raised them a little bit, but not substantially, because we're immune to many of the things that are, and we're not immune to the weather, but we have done a lot of things to mitigate weather. So, for example, those southern tier farmers, now that the price is back high as they build back, how do you mitigate for drought? And so on our pond, over the years, we've built 20 ponds. We have 12 miles of buried water line. We irrigate from ponds when we have snow melt and hurricanes come through and things like that. So when you have extra water, we inventory it. And that is not stealing water or depriving water down from somebody downstream. It is simply keeping people from downstream from being flooded. And so if we actually duplicated what the beavers did in pre-European North America, we would have a substantial water inventory to mitigate weather anomalies. And so to me, the big story here is not that we had a weather situation and we have a herd diminishment, but the real question is, well, what are farmers going to do for the next time, to prepare for the next time? And so the first thing you can do is to begin reducing flooding by building ponds, inventorying water. Number two, increase your organic matter, because organic matter holds 4 times its weight in water. And so if you use chemical fertilizers, you reduce your organic matter. If you use compost and perennial forages, you increase organic matter. So we need to be increasing organic matter and developing these systems to mitigate whatever anomalies come in the future. And so that's what we've done with our farm. We're not just like nobody. We're not completely immune to
Right.
anomalies. But you can certainly mitigate it. If you can mitigate it 75%, that's a huge asset.
Well, what's your solution then to rising meat prices worldwide? If you had to give advice to uh, meat industries in other parts of the world. So here is the FAO World Food Index published by the UN. You can see here in this chart that's pretty interesting actually. In real terms, according to this chart, the index hasn't changed much since the early 60s. It's had a bit of a dip throughout the 80s and early 90s, and then it climbed back up. And now we're basically at the same level, if not a little bit higher than 1961. In real inflation adjusted terms, in nominal terms, it's continued to go up by many times. If you look at the breakdown that they provided here, it's very interesting because meat is the line item that has grown the most. If you look at it as an index level, it was 77.8 in 2007, and now more than 50% higher than that, 80% higher than that, 117.3, whereas dairy stayed relatively constant, 122 to 129, cereals 100 to 113, vegetable oils, sugar went up a lot, but that's
Yeah,
maybe that's
yeah.
a different story. But yeah, what do you do about the meat situation there?
Yeah. So the meat situation. So here's my whatever advice about the whole meat situation. So as you know, David, the President Trump and the administration is looking at a 10 to 11 billion dollar bailout to the soybean farmers. So who was really hurt by the tariffs, or was when China said we're not going to buy soybeans from you. Well, China purchased roughly a quarter of the U.S. soybean crop, and half of the U.S. soybean crop is exported. So I want you to just think about half of the soybean crop is exported. China bought half of that, which was a quarter of the whole U.S. production. When China said we're buying zero soybeans from you, now they have since Trump met with Xi Jinping, they have agreed. China's agreed to buy some of the soybeans, but the fact is that that American farmers, because of crop subsidies and federal involvement in the market, are growing way more soybeans than the world needs. And so my encouragement to farmers, I actually did an analysis on this for an article that I wrote. This year they're going to lose $100 an acre on soybeans because of the collapse in the price. They've overproduced. But if they had been growing grass, prairie, the native prairie on those pastures, on those same fields, they would have made $1,000 an acre with beef at today's prices. So I want you to think about that swing per acre of $100 of loss versus $1,000 of profit. Look at that gain. And so what the Trump administration needs to do is not give these soybean farmers a safety net for overgrowing soybeans. They need to just learn about the consequences of their overproduction, convert to grasses, and grow beef. Beef is what we're short of. We don't need any more soybeans. We're already oversupplied. That's why the price collapsed. What we need is more grass to grow beef, to grow herbivores. And so if these farmers would make that conversion, they would be tapping into a shortage, and therefore be able to to change their financial situation. But the intervention of the federal government with these subsidies, it warps it makes the consequences of an oversupply not felt by the overproducers. And that's I don't know about you, but the market works if you quit fiddling with it.
There's also a bigger problem of how farms are able to sustain their practices. I've been reading that agricultural input tariffs jumped from 1 to 12%. It's causing a lot of farmers to expect, this is the number that I've been quoted, $109 per acre loss on the farm. Farm bankruptcies in some areas are surging in the first half of 2025. And
Yes.
so tell us about what these input costs are that are rising, and the future of, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, the input costs, so that's chemical fertilizer and herbicides, pesticides. I mean, when Putin invaded, let's see, where are we in the Ukraine war now? Are we 3 years in? I think when Putin invaded Ukraine, Russia was by far and away the world's largest supplier of chemical fertilizer, and and it jumped 400% when as soon as he invaded Ukraine, and that tail is still being felt in the industry. And so what you have are these rapidly rising input costs with and so either the farmer goes bankrupt or the farm or somehow the system has to pay the farmer more. Well, how does the system pay the farmer more? Well, it increases at the supermarket. I mean, there's not enough margin built in to be able to absorb, 30-40% increase in input costs. So again, at our farm, we don't buy any of these chemicals, and so that didn't affect us. What we do is we do large scale composting and controlled rotational grazing, so we don't buy any of this. We let the biology happen. And so again, if we would, as a nation, if we would begin a carbon economy on our farms, where we take all the forest land that burns, we spend what, 7, 8, $9 billion a year dealing with forest fires. If we took all that money, or if we started investing in carbon and chipping those trees that are dead and dying and going to burn and burn up somebody's house, if we would take those trees and chip them and compost them, we could eliminate the chemical fertilizer. Putin wouldn't have any income at all selling it, and we would be self-sufficient by solar. Trees are solar collectors. We would actually have biological solar collectors running our fertility program, building our soil. That's the way out of this system. And so at our farm, now it does cost money. It takes energy to chip. It takes diesel fuel to run a chipper. It's true. All right. But look at what's happened to energy costs. Since Trump has gotten in, diesel and gas have dropped, 20%? And so at our farm, since we run on biomass, our input costs have actually shrunk substantially as energy costs have come down.
Well, Joe, I don't know much about farming, so please excuse my ignorance here, but is your approach scalable? Like if somebody wanted to build multiple very, very large commercial grade farms that could supply an entire city or state or whatever, and they wanted to do so cheaply, is the word, would they use your approach?
Well, our approach is not capital intensive. It is more labor intensive.
Okay.
And so you're substituting human expertise for depreciating infrastructure. And that's probably another topic for another day. But
Sure.
but I think it's important to realize that if you look at tax policy actually rewards infrastructure and equipment depreciation. It actually penalizes you for hiring people, for actually having people do the work, because then you've got workman's comp, you got Social Security, you got a minimum wage, you've got all sorts of rules and regulations about people, but you can go out and abuse your tractor and blow it up. And that's an expense. You can expense that off, and it's a tax write-off. So there's a very prejudicial tax. The tax code is very prejudicial against substituting people for equipment and infrastructure. And so that's the world we live in, which is why we can't undersell the system right now, but we can certainly compete with it. And I can tell you that on our farm in the last 2 years, we have only gone up about 10% on beef, just to try to not to be too completely out of the loop, whereas the industry's gone up substantially more.
This is the article I think that you were, or maybe the news item you were addressing earlier. USDA announces more funding, so the USDA will deliver in total more than $16 billion in congressionally approved assistance to America's farmers, said the USDA Deputy Secretary. Well, what do you think about this story here?
Well, I don't think farmers need any money. I mean, what farmers need two things. Farmers need they need access to the market, which they do not have. If you wanted, David, if you wanted to come to my farm and buy a chicken pot pie that I can't sell it to you legally. And so
You
as
can't sell.
Americans,
Sorry, what? You can't. Why? Why not?
I can't sell you a chicken pot pie that I made to you legally without a $500,000 kitchen compliance and HACCP plans and safety reports. The problem is that the current American farmer, it has lost the capacity for the butcher, baker, candlestick maker to be embedded at the farm level.
Ah,
The farm gate price has dropped from 50% of the retail dollar in 80 years ago to now 8% of the retail dollar, as Americans have gone for convenience food. Very few Americans actually cook. They like to watch cooking shows, but they don't actually like to cook. And so they like the convenience. They like prepared heat and eat, hot pockets and Lunchables and prepared foods. And so between the farm gate and that convenience food market where the money is a plethora of government regulations that make it almost prohibitively expensive. And then you have zoning rules that say, if I make a pot pie, that's manufacturing, that's not agriculture. And so we have a plethora of rules and regulations that keep a farmer from being able to tap into the value added convenience market, which then means there are just not enough dollars flowing into the farm gate to keep the farm in business. So number one, we need to free up farmers to be able to access their neighbors with value added convenience food. And number two, we need to take away the safety net that lets farmers continue to overproduce and make terrible decisions and not suffer the consequences. The worst thing you can do is take away the consequences of bad decisions from somebody, because then they actually don't exercise their decision making, discernment.
well, it seems like there are some American farmers who are asking the government for help. I mean, your argument is that farms normally shouldn't need money, but according to this New York Times article, struggling farmers take on debt. A bailout from D.C. may come too late. It could be months before they receive aid, well after the winter period when they talk to their bankers and make decisions about the planting ahead. And then we've got some quotes from a few farmers interviewed from this article here. I'm cash flowing on what my anticipated yield is based on what I know today, says a farmer who farms 1,000 acres in Minnesota. I am not banking on the U.S. government to do it. The government reopened Wednesday, as you know, after 43 days. And a lot of the aid is going to get postponed. I mean, why fundamentally do farmers need aid then? If it's not, if we're living in a market economy here, what's going on?
That's the problem. We're not living in a market economy. That's what I'm trying to explain. We're not living in a market economy. If we were living in a market economy, the government would not be wiggling its finger into every hole in every box of agriculture. And so when you look at the agriculture programs, they and the food regulations, they keep farmers from being able to sell, and that inability to sell into the convenience food market, into the local community market, creates a very skewed income potential in the farming community. The farming community that could be getting many billions of dollars as they compete in the food system, are instead getting way less than that. And this is what Bernie Sanders is always talking about when he talks about the oligarchy. We've all heard about the oligarchy. Four companies control 85% of the beef market in the U.S. Four companies control 85% of the beef market in the U.S. And that happens only because a farmer can't cheaply and efficiently get his beef into ribeye steaks and ground beef for his neighbors. That's the issue. So what we need is a food emancipation proclamation, to free individuals, so that if you want to come to my farm as two consenting individuals exercising our freedom of choice, we should be able to engage in a food transaction without asking the government's permission. If we did that, it would launch thousands and thousands of entrepreneurial, profitable farmers all over the nation and shut down the oligarchy.
Well, on the trade front, there seems to be some good news. Last Friday, Trump announced an executive order that is exempting a range of food imports, including coffee, beef, and bananas, from his reciprocal tariff policies. The White House said the president has determined that certain agricultural products shall no longer be subject to the reciprocal tariffs. Critics of this plan simply are citing the fact that he's simply buying time for the midterm elections and potentially not risk upsetting his constituents more. But in any case, it should be good news for farmers, is it not? What trade policies are you looking forward to evolving next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's happening is he is trying to micromanage the market, and as you know, these markets are complex. There's obviously money involved, but there's also emotion involved. There are relationships, these long-standing quid pro quo between businesses and different people, and so it's really hard. It's really hard to micromanage. I mean, this is the problem with communism and socialism. It's very hard to manage something as complex as a large scale market like this. And so I think Trump is trying to micromanage too much, and instead he should just take his hands off and let the market settle to where it needs to settle.
Well, let's talk about certain agricultural products that have been impacted the most by the current trade relationship. So you mentioned soybeans. I'll just give you some statistics to further elaborate on the soybean situation here. In 2025, March, China imposed a 10% tariff on soybeans. By November 2025, that currently stands at 13%. China has agreed to buy 12 million metric tons by year end of 2025. Remember, a couple months ago, there was this reconciliation between Xi Jinping and Trump. Yes. But so far, they've only purchased about 300 metric tons as of November 12th. Brazilian soybeans account for now 70% of China's imports. The U.S. share fell to now 21%. And so I think a lot of these bailouts might be aimed at soybean farmers. I'm not sure, but that would make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Let's talk about this sector and others. Yes.
Yes, I think you are exactly right. The soybean farmers are the ones, for sure, who have I'll just say they have suffered the most from the tariffs, back and forth, and so if I'm now I don't raise soybeans, but if I'm a soybean farmer, my question to the soybean farmers is, what does it take for you to think about doing something different? How many times are you going to blame the government or blame China or blame Brazil or blame Putin? How many people do you have to blame before you actually look at an alternative? And my problem is with the soybean farmers, and I don't hate the soybean farmer. I don't have any vengeance or dislike of them, but I'm suggesting that goodness, if 4 years out of 5 you get hit, you get hit on the chin, maybe you start thinking, well, maybe I should switch from soybeans. Maybe I should grow apples or now beef. For sure, you should be growing beef. That's a way you can sell your combine and sell all your tractors and grow beef and take all that infrastructure money and turn it into beef, and then the beef prices will drop and the market adjusts, and soybeans come up because there are fewer of them, and beef prices drop because there's more of them. I mean, that's just so simple to me. And so my question to the soybean farmers is, what does it take for you to think outside the box, to think creatively?
Well, if you're a soybean farmer watching this, please comment below and maybe answer Joel's questions. Now, Joel, let's just take a step back here and think about the broader farming industry overall in the U.S. How do you think that's going to change in the coming years because of these tariffs that are implemented, because of the current trade policies? It'll take some time to really trickle down to all sectors of agriculture. Of course, it'll take some time for farmers to adjust. But once they do adjust, how will farming be different in a couple of years than now?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I don't do is prophesy because I don't know where we're going. But I do think this. What I do see is the MAHA movement. We haven't talked about the MAHA movement. We've been focused on tariffs, but I think one of the just that a movement that is as impactful as tariffs is the overall MAHA movement and the overall understanding among people that food is important. We as more and more people come to mistrust the the pontifications from the Food and Drug Administration, the USDA, Health and Human the Health and Human Services, um, uh, run by RFK Jr. is bringing studies. I mean, who knew 9 months ago that the U.S. has 10,000 food additives and Europe only has 400? Who knew 9 months ago that SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that over 10% of SNAP benefits, almost $15 billion, go to Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, and Mountain Dew. Who knew that? And so these discoveries are starting to change, and they're starting to affect. I mean, you're starting to see the Wall Street Journal carrying stories about junk food sales are down. Gen Zers, Gen Zers are beginning to really look at food additives. They're looking at other things, and I can tell you, at our farm, I mean, I have lived my life, all the decades I've been farming. I've gone to bed every night. Okay, who can I sell to? Who can I call tomorrow to market some more, chicken or pork or something to you? Who can I sell to? And in the last year and a half, suddenly the market has just exponentially increased. Why? What we're hearing is, I don't trust Tyson. I don't trust JBS. I don't trust feedlots. I don't trust the USDA and the food safety people, and EPA. I don't care that EPA says glyphosate is fine, and you can probably drink it if you want to. I don't believe them. I don't trust them anymore. And so this breakdown of trust in our revered food markets and food channels, food chains, is having a big effect on what gets produced and how it's packaged and how it's handled in the marketplace. And so what the trend that I see developing is an anti-industrial food trend. Can I just an anti-industrial food trend? And however that looks, whether it's a lot of backyard gardeners, a lot more small farmers, if it's larger farmers that are making changes at scale, more like us, that's perfectly fine. But I do think that the tariffs are one thread of an equal thread that is a cultural shift in a desire for food quality and an understanding of food quality.
About roughly a fifth of the U.S. food products are imported, I think. And the question is whether or not there's going to be food shortages if, let's say, people can't afford some of these imported goods, or like we talked about earlier, some farmers are just quitting or can't afford to run their operations anymore. Is that a concern for you?
Well, it is, and that's one reason why I am I'm an adamant defender of how do we create a pathway of entry for young farmers. And so let me just get back on my theme here
Yes.
of liberty, of food freedom. For example, our farm, we sell a chicken to a restaurant in city. They make a chicken pot pie. So they take a chicken they buy from us for $20, and they turn it into $400 worth of chicken pot pies in the restaurant. The point that I want to make is there are thousands and thousands of 5, 10, 15, 20, fewer than 50 acre kind of quasi homesteader wannabe farmers and young people wanting to enter the farm space. If they could actually, I'm just using chicken pot pie as an example, but you could use quiche, you could use tomato soup, you could use, any number of things. If a farmer can take a chicken and make a instead of $20, turn into a $400 pot pie, suddenly a 5-acre farm becomes a viable employment. It becomes a viable vocation, and that is the ramp. That is the package in, and the industry. The trade associations, the soybean associations, the Farm Bureau Federation, the industrial ag sector doesn't want that kind of competition in their food chain, and so they are fighting this tooth and nail to make sure that it can't happen, and in fact trying to get themselves liability for chemical sickness, chemical exposure, and that's obviously, that is coming because they feel the threat. They feel the threat of an awakened and an aware and an informed populace that's saying, it's not okay for me to bathe my kids in glyphosate. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. It's not okay, even if the EPA says it is. And so that is fundamentally changing the food system, and that's why we desperately need the market access for these young people to be able to get into farming. Yes, the fact that Bill Gates is now the largest landowner and big investment companies are buying up all this land, it is very concerning. And the reason that they're buying it up is not because farming is suddenly lucrative. It is because there is such an exit of farmers who can't make it in this in the climate, in the chemical industrial climate, and so the land is becoming available.
Let's move on to technology. Are you adopting new technology? So, for example, this story here: Colorado farmers turn to AI to survive as the state loses nearly 3,000 farms. And according to this article, the latest survey by the USDA shows Colorado has lost more farmland than any other state in the country. Between 2017 and 2022, the state lost 1.6 million acres of farmland. That's a 5% decrease. Many farmers say state policies added to the headwinds. Also, lack of labor supply. Later, the article explains people, like you said, people just aren't joining the farming labor force. And now they're turning to this, for example. This article states that this farmer says the Ecoro Botex ARA sprayer it's reduced the amount of pesticide they need by 91% on their 3,000-acre onion farm. It's not cheap, $300,000 for a sprayer, and it's $11,000 a year for licensing on the algorithms. He says it's a necessity these days. I'm guessing it's not a necessity for you, but can you see a future in which automation will be a necessity for your farm?
Well, I mean, we certainly use technology. We have computer microchip electric fence energizers. We certainly use internet for our social media sales and direct marketing. We're not anti technology, but I would suggest to this farmer, if he spent $300,000 on a sprayer, if he's put that kind of money into a composting program, he probably wouldn't need the sprays that he's using, because biology would take care of all the diseases that he's spraying for. The reason he has so many onion diseases that he has to spray for is because he's killed the biology in his soil, and he doesn't have checks and balances that nematodes and protozoa provide in the biological mix. I mean, right now, a healthy handful of soil has about $7 to $8 billion. This is a money show. 7 to 8 billion microbes in it, and we've only named 10% of them, and we don't even know what 90% of them do. That's how complex and amazing the soil is. But mainline conventional farmers view the soil as just a mechanical thing, like a bearing on a car, and we can just pull and plug and play and pull this out, put that in, and it's not mechanical, it's biological, and there's a big difference between machines and living things. You can go out and hug your car, your Ferrari, all day, and the Ferrari doesn't care a lick. But if you go out and hug a cow responds to you. I mean, there is a big difference between mechanics and biology. And these farmers, I love them. I mean, I don't hate these farmers, but I'm telling you, there is entire alternative view. I mean, there are all sorts of different kinds of ways to farm, to keep things healthy, to keep things alive. And it starts with a healthy soil, with a healthy immune system. I mean, think bird flu. I mean, look at the poultry prices probably still reflect the the long trail of the bird flu. Look how many chickens we killed this spring with the bird flu. But the bird flu policy, the bird flu policy, look, if you lived in a toilet all your life and all you breathed in was fecal particulate, you'd probably have bird flu too. You'd probably have more than bird flu. And these systems are very aggressively anti-friendly habitat for plants and animals. And for bird flu, what they need to do is stop the annihilation campaign. And when they go into a house and there's 300 or 400 survivors, keep the survivors and breed them. You don't kill the survivors if you're trying to get better genetics. You don't kill the survivors, you save those and breed those. And so the entire policy is inverted upside down from what true science and what true, normal genetic, genetic husbandry would demand.
All right, well, let's close off in the future. I know you don't like to prophesize, but I think the regular viewer watching this wants to know how to prepare for basically, their food consumption, which is the most important thing for anybody. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, everyone needs to eat. So given current trends that you're witnessing now, how do you think the food industry is going to change into 2026? Which types of foods do you think will have the most inflation, with least inflation next year? And generally, how do you think people's consumption patterns may evolve? I know there's multiple questions in that, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, well, I think there are, and I think that the high beef prices, because of the long beef production cycle, I don't see any relief on beef through 2028. I know that's a long tail, but it is a long cycle.
Yeah.
And so the chicken can recover rapidly if next spring we have the bird flu back again. It tends to come in the cold weather and goes away in the hot weather. And so if we have bird flu again, we will see chicken prices, go way, way high. I think in general, I see an expanding trend toward non-chemical food, whether it's organic or beyond organic. That's what we call ourselves. But a non-chemical and truly, outside. I think one of the big trends now is outside the supermarket. I mean, we ship now, door to door. Look, the cost. Here's the interesting thing: the cost of retail interface. Maintaining a Costco, a Walmart, a Kroger, a Safeway. The cost of retail interface has escalated dramatically in the last 10 years. The cost of door-to-door delivery with super sophisticated high-tech distribution logistics has plummeted in the last 10 years. So things that could not have imagined competing in the market, competing at price for door-to-door delivery even just 10 years ago, are now suddenly competitive with retail sales, including Uber Eats and people that go DoorDash, people that go in and shop for you. And so we're already seeing, for example, numerous stories are now coming out where Gen Zers are now eating out way less because of the cost of eating. I think that if the financial world, we haven't talked about the Fed and inflation and that stuff, but I think if we don't get a handle on the national debt, I mean, we're now spending $8 billion a day just financing the national debt. And so if we don't get a handle on that, we're going to see continued economic pressure especially on young people. The price of houses. We know what's happened to the price of housing, and so we're already seeing Gen Zers greatly reduce their eating out, times, and they're starting to cook at home, which I think is great news for the health of the overall food system. It will be much healthier if we start to actually viscerally touch and participate in the food system. You cannot have an authentic, credible food system and be as profoundly disconnected as Americans have been the last 20 years. So the chickens are coming home to roost. Sorry, I couldn't do without the farm analogy, but this multi decades, even a generation of not caring about food, not being connected to food, abandoning our kitchens and running to fast food, convenience food, and culinary ignorance. All of that starts to come together and create the kind of pressure that we see right now. And I'm very excited seeing a lot of that creating new desires and new interests within the buying public.
Joe and I have talked about the overall trend of health in America in the prior conversation, so check that out, link down below, and do subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. Joe, I'll close off on this one final point. I'm guessing you're not a fan of what I'm about to say next, but artificial meats may be a solution, may or may not. I stress the word may, I don't know. But look at this article that came out in April this year. We haven't talked about it because I haven't had you on the show since late last year. Scientists create the world's largest lab-grown chicken nugget in Japan.
Yeah.
All right. A team of researchers in Japan achieved new lengths growing a single square piece of chicken 2.7 inches wide and 0.7 inches thick with a new lab tool. Weighing in at about a third of an ounce, the artificial chicken muscle was a small bite, but it's believed to be the world's largest chunk of lab-grown meat. All right. Well, I don't know how much this would cost in theory, but what do you think about this trend?
Well, what I think is if you go back about 8 years, and look at the billions of dollars dumped into Impossible Burger, Beyond Beef, all the fake meat cell culture, it was a bunch of stuff. All of that went south, went bankrupt. They lost billions and billions of dollars because it turns out that it's really hard to duplicate kidneys and livers and blood vessels and hearts. And the reason that that everything is so small is because the only way you can artificially try to recreate blood vessels and kidneys and livers and things is with bubbles and filters. And bubbles and filters are very, very difficult at scale. So the truth is that all this platitudes about cell cultured and artificial and lab and fake meat, they've really only done it in 5-gallon buckets. They haven't been able to do it at any kind of scale. And so I think there is nothing as efficient. There's nothing as efficient as the way God designed it. These animals are made, and the only reason that we're even dancing with all this fake material, which doesn't have nearly the nutrition. If you measure the nutrition, it doesn't have nearly the variety of enzymes, fatty acids, and all that in it. The reason we're flirting with that is because I think we have come to kind of a threshold of, well, what's next in the industrial animal system? Okay, we wanted to put 100 chickens in a chicken house, and then we said let's put 500, let's put 1,000, let's put 20,000. Now we have 100,000, and again, a biological scale like this eventually does break down. Nature, there's a reason why things are the size that they are, and in nature, I'll end with this. In nature scales. You were asking about scale. So nature scales with duplication. It does not scale with consolidation. If nature wants more oak trees, it doesn't make a great big oak tree. It makes a bunch of little oak trees. If nature wants more tomatoes, it doesn't make a great big tomato plant. It makes a bunch of additional tomato plants. If nature wants more beef, it doesn't make a great big cow. It makes a bunch of baby calves. And so nature duplicates. And so when you ask about scale, what I'm suggesting is farms like ours, which are actually way more efficient than the great big monocropped industrial farms, they look impressive, but the actual production per square yard is way higher in a diversified, multi-speciated, synergistic, symbiotic type of arrangement that simulates nature through duplication rather than consolidation and centralization.
Yeah, and the fact that we don't know, we haven't done testing on actually eating these artificial meats for an extended period of time. We don't know the long-term health effects, so it's going to take some time for the USDA to approve all this. And I wonder, actually, if vegetarians will still be a vegetarian if they eat an artificial piece of chicken nugget. I don't know, some food for thought. Pun intended.
Yeah, that's a great pun. That is food for thought. And
Yeah.
by the way, most of this, because it is so difficult to excrete the waste in these artificial growth systems, they are bathed in antibiotics to try to keep infections down because it is such a toxic brew, because it doesn't have the kidneys and livers. I go back to kidneys and livers. It doesn't have these wonderful biological filters that we have. And so just imagine trying to duplicate all of that wonderful complex filtering that our bodies do, trying to duplicate that artificially. That's not an easy task.
Absolutely. Well, where can we learn about you now? Let's close off here. Where can we learn about your farming practices and follow your work?
So I'm at Polyface Farms, Polyface, Polyface Farms, and that's a very comprehensive website. I do a blog called Musings from the Lunatic Farmer. I do a podcast called Beyond Labels with Dr. Sina McCullough, but mainly you can find me at polyfacefarms.com.
All right, we'll put the link down below, so make sure to follow Joel and Polyface Farms there. And of course, he's got a selection of books, 17 books under his title so far, I believe. So check out his books on Amazon. I'll put the latest one down below. Thank you, Joel, for coming on the show. We'll speak again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe.